Welcome everybody to another installment of the Etnyre Video Library. In this video, we're going to talk about the air oiler and water separator for the distributor. This is a very important feature to keep not only water out of our air system, but to keep our air valves and cylinders lubricated as they should for good operation. The unit is located on the passenger side in the rear toolbox. The air oiler and water separator system on a distributor is used to not only get water out of your air system, but we also provide air tool oil to our solenoid valves to keep them lubricated. We have the air oiler bowl. That's where we're going to add our air tool oil, the Napa Air Tool Oil 765-1400. Then we have an automatic water separator. If this ever gets moisture in it, it will automatically bleed off the water. Then up above here, we have a T-handle. Older trucks may have a yellow handle here, but this will allow us to shut the air off and bleed it from this point to the back of the distributor. And then above this oil canister is an adjustment screw or an adjustment knob. You can adjust that clockwise to decrease the amount of oil that we're using, or counterclockwise to increase the amount of oil that we're using. An air gauge, which we want to keep at roughly 120 psi, never more than 120, but ideally as close to 120 as we can keep it. This is the adjustment for the air gauge, so if you have to adjust the air pressure, you can adjust it with this regulator. So first, the main thing is to keep air tool oil in your oiler. Now this will use oil every time you turn your 1-foot switches and everything off and on. So it's hard for us to determine how much oil, how often you should have to fill this. So a good recommendation or rule of thumb is probably if you use your truck every day, probably every 2 to 3 weeks, you should have to fill this canister with Napa Air Tool Oil. Part number is 765-1400. That is the recommended oil that we use in this air oiler. Now there are other air tool oils available out there. Marvin's Mystery Oil happens to be one of them, things like that. But they can actually make the gaskets in our valves swell. So we recommend sticking with the Napa Air Tool Oil, which you can find at any Napa store. So to bleed the air so that we can add oil to our oiler or shut the air off to the distributor portion of the unit, we turn the T-handle. And this will take a couple seconds because it's exhausting through this filter. But as you can see, the air is dropping. And you want to make sure that this bleeds completely out before you try to remove the bowl. So once all the air is discharged, you can simply push up on the bowl, turn it, and pull it down. It will release it. Now be careful, you have a hose in here with a filter on it. Now I can fill this bowl with the Napa Air Tool Oil. Make sure the O-ring is still in place when you put it back together. Simply put it in, turn it. Now it's locked into place and it will seal as soon as we put the air back to it. Now our air will build back up. Our truck isn't running currently, so we won't build clear back up to the 120, but once the truck starts, we'll build back up to 120 psi. Now you really need to check this. An average use time to have to fill this would be anywhere, if you use your truck daily, it'll probably be 2 to 3 weeks and we'll have to fill this oiler. If you're not using enough oil, you can adjust it with the adjustment screw, or if you're using too much, you can turn that down a little bit. But it is very important to have air tool oil in our system. As with any piece of equipment, please follow all the safety guidelines in the operations manual and wear the proper personal protection equipment required by your company or the state. We all want to return home safe every night, so be safe out there. You can contact your local dealer or the Etnyre factory to talk to a professional service or parts representative at the information provided on the screen. Thank you and have a good day.